Hey everyone, welcome back to GIS 126, Fundamentals of GIS. And today we're going to explore why we should use GIS and some examples of it. So on that note, let's get going. So in addition to the capabilities of storing, managing, analyzing, and displaying spatial data, we can also use GIS for improved organizational integration by sharing data across departments. So GIS is used by many different people within an organization, and we can share that data easily and efficiently through GIS. We can make better decisions. So by having better information, we can now make better decisions. They can be made. So that is key. Without good data, you can't make good decisions, and GIS helps us do that. Make maps. So it's important because we often say, I see to mean I understand. And pattern recognition is something human beings excel at. There is a vast difference between seeing data in a table of rows and columns and seeing it represented in the form of a map. And we saw that in a previous video lecture where looking at a table is a little more difficult to understand these population densities compared to looking at the choropleth map. So GIS allows us to ask questions and to explore data. So the first is, let's ask the question. So approaching a problem geographically involves framing the question from a location-based perspective. And what is the problem you are trying to solve or analyze? And where is it located? Being as specific as possible about the question you're trying to answer will help you in the later stages of this geographic approach, when you're faced with deciding how to structure the analysis, which analytic methods to use, and how to present the results to the target audience. So questions that can be answered using spatial analysis include, how many of something are in the area? Which site meets my criteria? What are the characteristics of an area? How is it distributed? What is near what? What is on top of what? And how is it related? All these kinds of questions can be answered using GIS. So GIS offers a wide range of analysis tools to manipulate, quantify, and manage your data to help answer your spatial questions. So once you have processed your data using the analysis tools, you are now ready to interpret your results by examining the map. So look for patterns in the map. And we saw an example of this when we looked at the Jon Snow map. We can see spatial patterns of where these cholera deaths were occurring around these pumps. And we can speculate about what might mean from a spatial or temporal perspective. Temporal means time. Ask yourself whether the results provide an adequate answer to the question you asked. If not, you may need to adjust your approach. Is your question too broad or is it too narrow? Do you require more or different data? Should you use more or different analysis tools? Should you use different parameters? So these are all kind of questions you're going to be asking yourself once you've kind of done the initial analysis and you're now kind of interpreting the results in a map. So after interpreting the results of the analysis, document your interpretation and decide how to respond. So in some cases, you might take action based on your interpretation of the analysis results. You might implement a solution, correct a situation, create an opportunity, or mitigate circumstances. In other cases, no action is required because your goal is to build knowledge and to gain a deeper understanding. Often new questions arise that need to be addressed, and this can lead to further analysis. So once you've answered your question and you're satisfied with the analysis, identify the audience who will benefit from your findings and determine who you want to influence. You may want to share your results with other members of your organization or with the public. So you can communicate your results using maps or apps, and their maps can be in a form of paper maps. They can be in terms of interactive maps, So there's lots and lots of ways that your message or your maps can be communicated. Later on, we'll talk more in detail about kind of identifying your audience and tailoring your map and analysis towards specific audience members. So in the next few slides, I want to kind of walk you through a very simple example of using GIS for analysis. So here's a question. What schools are located within a 2-mile area of top polluting companies? So here we can start out with a basic map with a layer of municipalities. So the next thing we can put on top of this are census tracts within municipalities. And census tracts are basically these statistical areas. They're just small areas. There's about 4,000 to 6,000 people within each census tract. So an example, you can see a smaller census tract is going to have a much greater population than a larger census tract. Next thing we might want to put on top are lakes and rivers. This might be important in our analysis when we're looking at pollution, because maybe the pollution could go into the water and be transported that way. So the next thing we want to put on here is our polluting companies. So they are identified as a layer in red, these red dots. And the next thing we want to put on here is our schools, since we wanted to know how many, which companies are polluting within a 2-mile radius of schools. And so here on a side note, I want to point out, and this user interface is from ArcMap. So it's going to look quite different than what we're using in this class, which is ArcPro. However, we will use ArcMap later in one lab assignment. But in any case, we can kind of just do a query. Looking here, we can find out which companies are polluting more than 50,000 pounds of toxins or pollutants. And they can be highlighted by doing this query by these cyan colors. So those meet our criteria where pounds of pollutant is greater than 50,000. Then what we can do is we can create our 2-mile buffer around these plants, and we can see which schools fall within that area, within this 2-mile radius. And so here we have what schools fall within there. And so this is just an example of a very basic kind of analysis that we can kind of identify schools within 2 miles of top polluters. So on that note, have a great day, and we'll talk with you in the next video lecture.